for April. And maybe we'd like to start off with the Karakia.
Sure. Tēnei taro rangi nui e tuake nei. Tēnei taro papatu anu koe takoto nei. Tēnei taro rangi rao ko papa e takoto nei. Kia rau te tapu ai o tāne ki raro tēnei tapu o nau mātia. Ka rangatia te au e piri. Ka rangatia ko tāne e piri e tata. Whakamaua ki a tīna. Tīna. Hui e. Tāki. Angus is just strolling in now.
Okay, we've got Angus just...
Karakia week.
This Angus is coming in now, so we'll just give it a couple of minutes until Angus comes in and then we'll get started. But in the meantime, I'll adjourn the meeting until Angus gets here. Good morning, everybody. We're back with Wastewater Management Committee. We've got a quorum. First off, I'd just like to acknowledge the departure of our Councillor Tony Robinson, who's just taken up a new post with Council for the last 3 days. And I'd like to welcome our new Wastewater Management Committee member from Council, Colin Alder. Okay, we'll start in with apologies. I don't have any apologies at this stage.
Put in Penny's apologies.
Oh, right. Apologies from Penny Brown. All those in favour? Declarations of interest. Is there any declarations of interest?
Just like to make an apology for not attending the end of the year last year's meeting. Somehow missed the community.
Right, we've got confirmation of the non-confidential minutes. Do I have a mover? Those, please. Moved by Ronald and seconded by Angus. All those in favour?
No.
Carried. We've got the governance work plan on page 8. There. We've got the leave of absence, none. Acknowledgements and tributes. Acknowledgements and tributes at all. No public input and petitions. Extraordinary business. Got no notice of motion or adjourned business. So we'll go straight to page 9, and that's the Drainwise program. And welcome to Tim Barry, our Offlines Director, and the owner.
If we take the Drainwise report as read, I can answer any questions on the report.
Very busy. It's great to see that there's been so many places that have been inspected, 222 for the last
And 25 downpipes taken out, which is quite substantial in quite a short period.
Yeah, it's quite crazy that there's so many downpipes going into the wastewater system.
Still being discovered.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a positive in regards to once we get them out, it does actually have a positive impact on the network.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, one downpipe can create quite a bit of damage. Yeah. Is there any instances where people are just putting them back in again after council inspectors go?
There are examples of new, as we go around Karakia at the moment, quite new downpipes that have obviously been changed recently. Trying to get information out of who may have done it has been difficult.
Right.
But just working through, focus was on resolving it permanently with the landowners of getting it actually to a stormwater outlet. But yes, there are examples.
Yeah. So what you're saying is that there might be some contractors that are actually doing it, really?
But it's getting the information on who the contractor is, and attempts to be, we haven't been very successful in that. Working with that contracting community in regards to education programs, just to bring them all back in line. This is a regular program, we will be discovering this stuff, so we need to ensure going to accrue the other.
Sure, yeah, well, as a community, we all need to get on top of this because otherwise we'll be having overflows in the river forever. So, even if you've got neighbours that report something or alert as a council member or council worker of an incident that's happening that's blatant, because every time there's a downpipe going into the wastewater system, that just triggers a faster overflow into the river, which is definitely what we don't need.
After you.
Angus, yeah.
Well, I was just wondering whether they must be a majority of private owned?
Private property.
Private property.
We did have some in the schools that are being worked through. Last year we went for a progressive program around all the schools and identified issues. And the program at the moment is predominantly going around Karakia and the private areas, but that'll include businesses as they come in. No, but the issues identified have been on private.
Penalties for people who reinstate them, not so much that,
We went
council
through
remove them.
process of working with the resident, knowing that the total focus is on getting it out. We have developing a process at the moment in regards to those that maybe are resistant to change, with the total focus on working with, but having that positive outcome of removing that issue from the network. So penalty-wise is more around non-compliance with building consent, Building Act, and that's the focus on that. But we've got a very good team at the moment around the inspection perspective that are very good at working with people and working through those difficulties that do exist.
It's often not the person who has the home that had anything to do with how it was plumbed originally, and many cases people would like to help but might struggle to meet their ends of the costs. We don't think a penalty-driven program is appropriate just yet because we're still finding enough. The ones who are, put a group in mind, landlords who are paying their part rather than maybe a need tenant, or I think we want to collectively move in that less penalty direction, but more determinant that you're doing it, your rates are going up or something. We need a program for that for the small group who don't comply and willingly avoid it. But there's others that maybe have bigger costs to manage just in their weekly budget to be able to deal with this that we're trying to be sensitive with. So we're putting an emphasis on appealing to people's angels, and then eventually it might make sense to have a different approach to a select group of people not conforming. But we want to do that sensitively too. But right now most people work constructively with us, and our team we work constructively with them and try and help some who wouldn't otherwise be able to afford it, but wouldn't help otherwise.
Old homes facing genuine hardship. Are there means for that?
Yes, and we do. We don't detail that terribly much because we don't want it to be done. We do, for those purposes. A couple of $1,000 can knock a family sideways.
Thank you, Chair. Couple of questions. One, can you give us the cost per inspection? Is it done by the hour, or is the contract given a rate per property?
It's done by the hour for how many they can work through. The cost is always within the budget, and the team we've got going around now is very efficient at getting around properties. I haven't broken it down to specific by property. General cost is about $5,000 a week for a team of people to go around and do these inspections, including any minor repairs of heavy traps, simple assistance with downpipes, etc.
So, in looking at point 13 on page point 12 on page 13, it's got that breakdown. We roughly have 6,000 more homes to visit, and at current run rate, we're doing about 10 houses a week, is my estimate, although that does over a Christmas period, so that may be a problem. And in the last 3 months, we've identified 25 blatant in the wrong hole offences, which equates to 1,250 homes, which is actually more than the homes we visited, if you know what I'm saying.
The flow rates, you mean?
On the flow rate point of view, it's the equivalent of an extra 1,250 homes in Gisborne. And on that, if you put that out, that's 6,000 houses to go. At that run rate, there's a lot of extra houses that we're collecting runoff from. Now, what I'm saying is, if the key problem is the downpipe, why don't we trim the ship up a bit and do quick checks just for the downpipe and get through the important part of this job first? Because as a councillor, this is now becoming the #1 hit point now that you're getting the potholes fixed. And it's not 2 years, it's too long. So, is it possible to race around the remaining 6,000 houses, up the run rate to 50 a day, targeting only downpipes?
I think that's an oversimplification of the issues, because the issues are also those gully traps as well in regards to any accumulation of water that exists in that property, and if there's openings in the back of those gully traps, which they find, as you can see by how many are repaired, there's a natural flow, which is also inflow into that. The downpipes are a clear visual aspect in regards to that physical dropping of the entire roof into there, but the gully traps are just as important in regards to any of that surface water that accumulates on that property. If there's a natural flow to the back of that gully trap or with the broken gully trap, we've got just as big an influence on it. And I think those rapid inspections too, it is that engagement with the property owner that takes time to get access into the property, to make those checks, to have a sound check of that entire property to address any issues, and then the time taken if the downpipes are discovered to resolve that issue, and the focus is on resolving them as quickly as possible at that time. So it's a very measured process, and what I'd say for the Drainwise team is in action now, that has been for the last couple of years, is their productivity through that time compared to maybe what happened previously has resolved issues wherever they've been. So it's not been a point of rushing through, finding where they are, and then trying to work back. It is a resolution issue to make sure that once we finish a catchment, we're sure that from an on-property perspective, we've resolved those either gully trap or downpipe issues.
There's a big bit here in the pastoral care element of this. When we're engaging them, we've got a particular system where that's the time where we have that interaction with the transgressors. That's quite taxing on time and energy, because you have to go through that. If we hit everyone, it's a good idea to consider, but it will be changing the approach that we're doing. And we've got to handhold people, because they're starting from a very cold start. It's their obligations to do it. We need to guide them through it. If we had way too many inquiries, we might damage our own.
Damage our reputation?
Yeah,
It's shot, mate.
I know, but we have those individual engagements. Otherwise, they'll be getting these letters, and we'll be engaging through social media rather than someone like a person talking to them directly, explaining why, and you'll get the same questions every time. So that's one of the reasons it's been working. So what's broken here would be the question.
What about racing ahead and stickering houses? And so if you're an owner, you know really quickly that your house is not up to spec. And then those that can afford to and have a conscience we'll actually do something about it and do it quickly. But at this rate of getting through, we're going to have to turn around and go straight back through again if you're saying connections are being awful.
That's going to be a lesser extent, so that'll be, I think it will be an ongoing program because those things will happen, so that'll be inevitable in regards to at some point. But no, to put that in perspective though is, well, the way that we're working with them is we're getting these things working with them to get them to an approved outlet. So removing that issue going forward. So what you're finding is if it's not done properly and they just divert the pipe out onto their property or into a garden, they've still got that issue and they still have that accumulation, so you end up with it going into that gully trap. Whereas if there is, the correction is to resolve that to an outlet, so therefore there's no more restrictions, then they're happy. We've taken care of it. There's no more ongoing issue with the water it's getting off. It's a very measured program, and making sure the doors are open to us, not closed. Put that in effect, if there's a resistance to entry into that property because we're rushing through, then it is really difficult to get safe access into that. So working with and developing those relationships that the team are able to do enables, I think a proactive or consistent resolution of these issues. We are, as in a report, we're expecting to get through all of Kaiti by August. And then we'll be back over the other side of town, down the main areas around there, just completing that, which is where those other homes are. So Kaiti is a key contributor in regards to the type of soil there, not much absorption, so these localised flooding issues or inflow issues have a greater effect in a shorter time span. So the teams, from my time in council, has progressed quite rapidly around, from my end, of getting effective resolution of these issues.
This program's been going for 6 years now, and the work that the team have done has been absolutely fantastic when you see the charts and you see what's been achieved, so, and over that time, all that information that your concerns are being raised, they've gone through all those and figured out the easiest way to consult with the community and everything. And if you can imagine going cold into a house and saying, we're from council and this is what we want to try and do, it's, you've got to talk your way through all that kind of situation and get the confidence of the landowners and everything behind you. So, I think in most instances has been really successful. I've been around a couple of times and seen all the smoke testing that goes on and everything. There's a lot of work that goes in. What you see on top of the ground is not what's under the ground. A lot of houses have got old clay pipes and all got cracks in them, and every time it rains and water falls into them, as soon as you put smoke down the drain and you see it all coming up in a person's backyard or where the front yard where the pipes are. It's quite amazing.
Can I suggest maybe bringing in one of our practitioners at the next Wastewater Committee meeting to talk through that, maybe an anatomy of an engagement with you, so how it looks and feels, so you understand the personal connection piece that's important here.
But just when you offend by parking your car overnight in the town, there's no engagement. There's a sticker on your car that says you're fined because you've broken the city's rules. And I just feel there's people out there that are, and we know blatantly breaking the rules, and yet they're swimming on by and the rest of us are suffering. Yeah,
well, I think in our experience, it's a real mixture though. The majority of people have little idea that they're breaking any rule at all. But it'll be good to get someone from the team maybe to address it and just tell them what the job entails, and then maybe you ask them directly what works successfully and what doesn't. And there's a lot of confidence needed. I mean, walking into anyone's property saying I'm from council, trust me, good luck.
You send out flyers first because I'm getting in the neck from my daughter who's got a house that's 2 years old and her house is going to be inspected. And she's saying, wondering why the hell a 2-year-old house is being inspected.
Because some are breaking the rules. So the idea of inspection wouldn't be valid if you didn't check a house. That's the purpose. So you actually have to eliminate transgressors or not. But even KO were delivering some houses outside of spec that we caught at the inspection point, not at the, but they'd already built it, and then we caught them there. So this is, and they never intended to do that. That's just what happened. So, and so new houses don't get off the list because they're new houses. And in fact, if we were going to do sweeps in the future, you'd probably look at changes in roof lines to see who would need to visit again, because those are the obvious times when you replumb a roof. So you can be a bit more scientific in the future, but initially you've got to see everybody, regardless of who they are or when their house was built and who built it. And that visit would be hopefully 15 minutes, 10 minutes, but an investment nonetheless. It's valuable, I'd say. Yeah.
Do you get any homeowners proactively saying we're changing the spouting?
We've got, in any community, you get some homeowners who are excessively vigilant in absolutely everything they do, and you get the whole extreme. So yeah, they don't come talk to me about it, but they'll probably come to the council and have a chat at the front desk when they're initially starting, and then hopefully get a chat with one of the development engineers. I think we offer that service here. Yeah.
Councillor Chipper.
Thank you for the report again. Always love the maps. Have a really quick general reference straight away and get a lie of the land literally. I'm wondering if there's been any consideration for reward or recognition when folk do engage with council. And we go in there, we do an inspection, we get the work done and everything is settled. It's just some thank you for their collaboration and building a sense of their contribution to correcting the wastewater issues that we face. And then as a community, growing a recognition that we're all in this and everyone's bit is valued and contributing directly to the future going forward. So just as a suggestion. The other one is the difficulty of when the wastewater pipes become full and struggle to transport water, whether or not there is a plan going forward to expand the size of the pipes. Not only for this issue, but with other hats on, the way council has been having discussions around future housing development, particularly in Karakia, and whether or not it's difficult, I understand that, but maybe start giving some consideration to expanding the capacity now and growing that.
I think that there certainly are. We have in the FDS got the, when we look at wastewater capacity within Karakia, new pump station options that sit in there, including rising mains or pipework back to the wastewater treatment plant. So a new line assisting in not only the new development, but also a balance impact on the existing infrastructure. So there's a lot of work going there to enable.
So also Lisbon Road, right?
Yes, yeah, Nelson Road. Yeah.
So ideally, so with a Karakia, there's known constraint, and the idea there is for a new system to work in parallel with the existing. We're not planning to increase the size of existing pipes, add additional capacity, and a pipe all the way to the wastewater treatment plant. So it's a big investment, but that's a known constraint in an area that we know is developing rapidly. Also, there's areas that grow sort of organically over time, and other networks are being upgraded, so the size is increasing to meet meet that future demand. One benefit we do have in our city, Tūranga, is we know where it's very obvious where the future developments are going to be. So those upgrades, although prohibitively expensive, are sort of known. And we're also moving into a new development contribution regime that the government signalled just last week of how some of that will be funded. So the intent by 2027 is for the cost of new infrastructure, including upstream costs, so costs of increasing capacity, say at treatment plants, and that will be borne by the new entrants to the system. That's good and bad news. One, it's going to potentially be a bit of a handbrake on development because traditionally that's subsidised, but it's also a costs where costs are scenario. So there might be a bit of a foot race dependent on some developments wanting to happen prior to that.
I raise that because my earlier comments about recognition is that the recognition to those homes that are contributing are in the context of council's growing thoughts on how its contribution is happening. So it's a community-wide thing. We'll do the big stuff. You guys see the small stuff, although it's not small. It's your home, and you know that's a huge effort. That bigger effort is also huge, and also going to be telling on the rest of the community. And it's building a sense of collaboration, in my view, that maybe starts to cut across some of what Colin is talking about. Our relationship with community and our ability to champion this collectively, and that we are making a huge effort as council, and the effort you make is equally as important to help each other and going forward on that. Thank you.
Okay, no more questions on the Drainwise program? It's a noting report. I have a mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Ronald and a seconder by Councillor Chipara. All those in favour? Okay, we'll go on to the wastewater treatment plant upgrade stage 2, which is on page 25. Page 24, actually.
If we take the report as read, we can.
No more update on the tertiary filters from last time?
The supplies were here in February, early February, and it was a really good, productive session with them, and it has continued an active engagement on a weekly basis with them as they process the information they've got, request more information to support their understanding, to still on that focus of working with them on solutions to the issue. At the moment, we just this week have started 2 weeks of testing for them in regards to, I just need to get the word right, correlation testing between turbidity and total suspended solids. To put that in perspective, the supplier and the design required the tertiary filter to use turbidity sensors. That's the way their system works. Yeah. Our consent is measured in total suspended solids. We're just looking at a correlation testing for them to support their position around how those two are linked when we're doing the active testing on a basis. So we're progressing well in regards to arriving at a position on resolving the issues for the tertiary filter. It's a journey we have to walk together with the supplier, and they have been very good at working through proactively with us on this. But it is a journey. We are a year on from understanding on, well, this is what's required to resolve this issue. The balance of the plant continues to perform well through a period of through today, very dry weather and high flow, producing consistent solids and consistency and performance coming out of the plant.
This is a whole new system. There's never been digital filters put into a situation like this here before.
We are leading the pack.
Yeah, leading the pack.
We're not fast followers, we're
Yeah.
leaders.
Yeah.
So it is, yeah, we're unable to learn from others effectively from a tertiary filter following the upstream processes we do here.
Do you have any forward date that you think everything will be all signed off and compliant? Is there a target date that you are looking at?
As we work through March with these, the supplier will have a better understanding of exactly what it looks like. We are so close to having that point of understanding.
Yeah, because there's certainly been an issue, hasn't it? And you might come along to a meeting today or it's been ticked off. We don't need to be talking about tertiary filters anymore.
This report should no longer be in there. It is our collective aim.
Yeah. Right, any questions at all from Councillor Tupai?
Thank you for the report. I do have a question, page 29 on the graph. Forecast blue line is the actual line with regard to the cumulative tracking. Am I correct in suspecting that that blue line is hidden underneath the yellow line for the forecast? Or are we forecasting just that little bit ahead?
So the orange line is the tracking previously, and the blue line is as we exist within this period. So yes, it is because we've been tracking for this financial year to here.
The point I'm looking at is whether or not the actual line is following the forecast line as the forecasting has been occurring.
Is being in line. So
Yes.
actually,
That's extraordinary. I'd like to congratulate the team on that a forecast and an actually lining up. And especially given the amounts you're having to deal with with wastewater, congratulations. I'd like to thank the team for that their forecasting is well considered and their delivery equally considered. And I think that reflects in that particular graph.
Fantastic. Do we have any other questions on the wastewater treatment plant upgrade? No, everyone seems to be happy. Well, we've visited the place on numerous occasions, so it's good to have all that insight. It'll be great when we know everything's all signed off and the water quality coming out of that wastewater treatment plant is spectacular. And it'll be recycled water rather than
It's already recycled. It's
all recycled, is already recycled, but the termination and the perception is the most important thing. Yeah. Okay, all right, well, we'll move on to, it's just noting report. We'll have a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Alder, seconded by Councillor Tuparo. All those in favour? Carried. Right, we've got the last paper, the National Wastewater Standards Update. On page 31.
Maybe just a quick explanation. This information just came out late last week. So what we have done is just put those, what's been sent out by government agencies into this for points of acknowledgement and discovery.
Yeah.
I've written a brief summary on that. What I've assumed is that we would be in the low energy coastal aspect when I'm talking to where we stand versus what those proposed levels are.
But I'd also point out that it shows how relatively favourable we're sitting in terms of national issue, with consents expired in over 21% of wastewater treatment plants around the country, and we're not in that situation, and an awful lot pending in the next few years. So we're fortunate to have one wastewater treatment plant. So what I mean by that is if we've got a consenting challenge, we have to repair one treatment plant or upgrade one treatment plant to meet the requirement. Where some of our neighbours might have 6 or 8 for communities of similar size or even smaller than us, making their challenges in that consent and treatment space is so much more difficult than ours might be. So there's some benefit, and that's why our relative health and water compares quite well across the country. We're not the best by any stretch, but we're actually one of the more less complex to manage in the country. Yeah.
So with these new wastewater requirements, we're totally compliant for open ocean. What about if we decide to go to wetland? Are we still going to be in that compliance category?
That will totally change. The receiving environment will change considerably.
Yeah.
We're unlikely to meet that requirement with the present system.
How do we meet that? Because that is the ultimate goal, isn't it? To not have the ocean outfall. So how do we...
Not having the ocean outfall might be different to not always using the ocean outfall.
Yeah.
So if you have a storm event, you have, however good Drainwise would be, you never eliminate the large flows you have in weather events, whether it's from the water table or from specific inflow. In those cases, you've got a wastewater treatment plant that won't deal capacity-wise. So you could not have that, any bypass to that action going through a wetland. Physically you could, but you wouldn't want to. The other part we could look at, if a wetland was considered, was how much would it be made up from the actual treated water from the wastewater plant. I won't call it wastewater, it's treated water. It's actually of a quality that we can measure and value. And then how much was made by natural stormwater that actually fed that. So you might find that you've got a wetland, but it's 20-80, 80% stormwater going in there and 20% from recycle. So
We'd also maybe seek distinction on ours would be a created wetland for a purpose of further treatment of the wastewater, as opposed to in here they're talking about existing receiving wetlands. I think we'd need to define if there's a distinction there, maybe in our feedback.
and commonly a challenge too in the consent world, we work on metrics, and you can control way better the metrics out the end of a pipe than you can out the end of a wetland that might follow a pipe. So whilst it might have, it might improve the quality further, in some cases it won't. Some scenarios it will do the opposite. It's a natural environment, operates differently than a very controlled wastewater treatment plant environment where you're in control of everything. So those things aren't really reflected in the regulatory environment that we're in. So that's a bit of a challenge as well. So if we could get the agreement that we measured at the outlet pipe and not at the outlet of the where the wetland meets the receiving environment, which in this case would be the ocean, then that'd be of interest. We're also dealing with large flows here. Where wetlands are used nationally, they're usually very modest flows. Variable success from a regulatory position. So, yeah, a few challenges there.
Yeah, because I have to agree with you, Larry. That's Gisborne's ultimate, isn't it? We've got this event on here in Gisborne at the moment, and back of your mind, it's just not a nice thought that Sutherland's blowing it all in.
No, and there's other talk about how this wastewater could be used for the benefit of the community and in other areas. So because we've got all this water that's recycled, and it can be used for irrigation, it could be used for irrigation, it could be used for a whole lot of things. But we've got to find an alternative rather than letting it out into the ocean, to the sea, to the ocean. And in the back of our mind, right from the start, there, that was always the alternative. I mean, because Tangata always said that that's not appropriate. We don't want wastewater going into the ocean. And we've been on a huge journey since a long time ago, when we just had when the pipe was first put out. There was controversy, and then everything got chopped up into little pieces and still went out with a milli screen. And I've served the Midway many a time, even prior to that, and it was not nice. And after it was all chopped up, it was not that pleasant either. And we've certainly come a long way since those days, thank goodness. But I would have thought that in the back of our mind, that was always going to be the alternative. So it's kind of a little bit concerning, though. We've heard you've just said now that another alternative receiving environment is going to change the whole.
A question for Ronald. Is Ronafakata the owner of that area of land, which would be the natural receiver of a land outlet? And have they got some sort of long-term plan that might accommodate a flow of water that could benefit, for example, in a carbon sink, growing trees, or?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I can't speak for Royal Whakata.
No, I'm just putting it past you. Is it?
So
Consider
they
it.
have an interest in the lands there, obviously, but most of those parcels are held by land trusts. Yeah. And they've considered many options for the area, in discussions with council as well.
Yeah, correct. The Aopuni Moana is being considered for that purpose, and that's a long-term aspirational work in that area. I'd just caution on how much of that water it would come from a treatment plant or that source, and how much might come from other land drainage sources, which we have as well.
The mixture would change the whole. The mixture of waters would change the whole outcome of you wouldn't say no, we can't do this, but if it was a combination of other waters contributing to an area, a wet area, that's a different solution, different conversation altogether.
Also, land-based disposals are treated with higher requirements than ocean, and that's clear with the new regulation, with the indications come from government. So there'd be additional cost on communities to do that. Maintain ocean outfall. I'd also say the point of getting rid of the ocean outfall, I don't think would be practical once this was fought through either, for the other reasons I mentioned. So you have an ocean outfall anyway, and it needs to be sized at that scale anyway, because that's good practice for days like this if it gets worse. there's a lot of interest nationally in land disposal and other techniques. Yet to see it successful at any level of scale that we be implemented. That's the other reality which I'm not doing well. Not that we'll try something.
Yeah, I understand their comment, Tim, but if we had a legal process several years ago, we would not be compliant today. So that's why we're leaving stuff, because we need to change stuff for our community and our environment, for our people. I'm not worried about so much the rest of the country, but we've got issues here that we want to deal with, that we want to deal with. Whilst I understand national standards and how they work, I guess the key thing when we did the consents, Mr. Chair, was having higher standards, because our community expect high standards. Our iwi desire is still to shut the pipe, don't get that wrong. So that's still our objective. And that's why we've been complying and shifting our approach as we move the consent along. So I would say that the community has compromised itself several times to make sure we're compliant. But there's a point in time where that's got to change. And that's why we went down a track of alternative use and disposal. So that's the intent, and always has been from what you perspective. There's a few questions in this that I want to ask you guys. So how are they going to consult on these new standards?
And the base of the report, especially the second one, they've got their feedback moving forward. That's all up with it. They did do, Tamata Arawa did do a case study program across North Island, South Island. Anyone from a council or wastewater treatment plant to step up, so they've done a case study with local iwi, hapu, engaged with, they met with us in regards to just what the process of treatment was and also the consent process, and then it's been primarily based around whenua. That case study still sits with local
So what are we as a council? Anything additional?
At the moment it's very fresh, it was just received last week, so define what the responses required.
I guess what I'm leading to, Mr. Chair, is that I hope that we keep and maintain the pressure on having higher standards, not lower standards, across all those environments. So the next question is, how do we treat Tikaraha?
So at the moment it's the oxidation ponds. Where does it fit?
Yeah, so where does it fit?
At the moment, there's like a brief thing in there from my summary of this report is it would fit in the small wastewater treatment plant and be to advise what
So I'd like to suggest that we advise the community, arrange engagement, have some discussion with them on what that means. Downstream from there, we should be also thinking of community consultations. That goes into the Waipawa. Just on Tikarakia, have we got any updates on where we're at with the
An update, the Kiwa group and Tangata Whenua reference group met last week on Thursday. It was the first meeting. We updated on the further land-based treatment project for Te Karakia that we propose to go to community and work through those options that are identified. So at the moment that sits within working with the community and for it's a collective
So the ultimate for Te Karakia is to have a land-based system with no outlet into the Waipara.
That's the ultimate. There have been reviews done on the types of soil out there, and is it possible to, in the vicinity of the existing treatment facility, use land to treat that from, and the study's been peer reviewed as well. There are 5 months of the year that a land-based treatment system would work. The other 7 months it wouldn't work. So that's this step of talking with community about that, and then what other options are there exploring those.
What is the reason why it wouldn't work for 7 months of the year?
Soil type,
Soil type.
groundwater level.
Yeah.
It's a challenge everywhere.
Yeah. So it's finding, working together to find options going forward.
Councillor Tuparo.
Further to the discussion raised by committee member Nipi, on the communities of 1,000 or less, does that create a possibility for some of our other communities in the Tairāwhiti considering systems for themselves, the Manatūke, Muriwai, Ruatoria, and many others? Does this now give them a potential to have some thought about where they might want to go themselves in the future?
Usually,
They already are, because they've got septic systems in those communities. Shifting from their existing treatment facilities to new ones are really problematic, because many have invested already in their own septic system. The new regulatory environment under local water done well is who pays, really, and you'd be asking someone to retire their existing system to run into a community system, which need to be paid for by that community. So in practice, I can't see it a sustainable financial way of doing it, because there's existing infrastructure there already on every property that's disposing to ground mostly. So would there be an opportunity? There'd be an opportunity for new developments way more than there would be for existing dwellings.
I do raise that because we're supporting the growth of houses in our villages with the Toi 2 housing project. And in some cases, particularly ones like Waihirere and even Waituhi, we pretty much doubled the number of houses in those communities, and which further puts stress on the environment around those villages if there's not any consideration for how we're dealing with issues like this for those growing parts of the community. And to an extent, we're supportive of them growing out there, so they're not growing in the city and contributing to the issues we've discussed earlier about the city's ability to deal with this issue. But whilst we're encouraging them to go out there, are we having thoughts of how we can also assist with that growth, the infrastructure that growth will continue to require? And at least if we're thinking about it now, we can, as a community, discuss mechanisms to future-proof that growth and assist that growth as it's coming on board. It doesn't look as though it's going to slow down any from what I can tell. There just seems to be trucks loaded with homes being outbreaks that way. And like I said, it's about the infrastructure that I think are under the villages to cope with some of that growth. Not too different to what our expectations here in the city are.
Yeah, it's fair to say it's probably the biggest constraint on the footprint size of those developments as they are built. So, is how wastewater is disposed of. And that's dealt with in the regulatory regime, that's dealt with in the consenting area, and the population expected in the building, and the ground to dispose of, but they're always incorporated in those developments. So they've already invested in the wastewater treatment. To do another one on top of that would be another expense. So, yeah.
Is council expected to do the consultation, or is Taumata Arawai doing that consultation?
Confirm on that, I'm not.
Because just on that point, and given our demographic here in the Te Rāwhiti, the use of the term Arawai is to, and I'm not hoping to be the expert in the room on the reo, but is to stand in front of something, to be the front of that, and what you're in front of, for that to have a front. And so there's a direct engagement in that, and that engagement is around the water. Yet through the document, and I may have missed it, but I've scanned there a consultation document with any reference to the cultural aspect of Arawai and the lack of recognition for a cultural outcome in the consultation. It does talk about public and environmental health outcomes to have a balance. And I think for our demographic in the Te Rāwhiti, we would require a cultural outcome to also be part of that balance. And whether or not feedback that council gives to whoever is leading this consultation, consider including a cultural outcome as part of the packaging and the delivery of this out into community, particularly here in the Te Rāwhiti, for consultation, because it does appear to me to be absent, but it's implied in the name of this organisation. And just to assist them to live up to the titles that they apply to themselves, as if we can contribute back to shoring up the label that they put onto that body to ensure that cultural aspect is carried through.
Kia ora tātou, my apologies for my lateness. My question continues the discussion of Councillor. My interest is, anywhere in this, does this matter speak to Māori? I did hear that the two places in which water can be dispersed through water waste treatment is either to ground or through the waterways. In any part of that, are we considering te mauri o te wai and what is actually consequently happening to the life force of the water as a result of those two movements? Along with the concept of arawai, taumata arawai, it would be good to see that there's an inclusion of a holistic approach to measurement that takes it away from the scientific approach, but also ratifies it with the cultural approach. That way, it would keep Māori community happy that the Māori o te wai is actually in a really good place. Māori being the life force of the water, because our documents here speak to actually the process and protocol organisation, but it actually doesn't speak to the health of the waterways, which te Māori o te wai, through scientific rigour, has been able to show we can prove that. And I don't know that that's clear in this documentation. If we are moving towards the process of being able to confirm that the actions we make through national wastewater standards applied here in the Te Rāwhiti, we'd want to see Māori o te wai applied to that as a measuring stick. Yeah. So it's all Māoris talk about where the water is concerned, te Māori o te wai. Because if the life force is sick, then so will the people be.
Angus, go ahead.
Did they come and meet with the council last year? They had a hui last year.
Te Mount Arawai on their case study wastewater treatment in New Zealand came to council to talk to us, and it was really just what the process was that the community went on to arrive at the treatment plant. And Whenua's involvement in that, and then the critical part was engagement with.
Yeah, they had a separate hui with different iwi members, which may be a different line of thought.
And they have a draft. They're waiting on local approval from Tony Whenua on how the case study they've written. And then there will be I think there's a report coming out that relating to this around what those case studies informed. And they were a part, I think, of where they've arrived at with their proposal that they put forward last week in here. But
Okay, any more questions at all on? Again, it's just a noting report, so I have a mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Angus and seconded by Councillor Order. All those in favour? That's carried. That's the end of our Wastewater Management Committee meeting. I'll declare this meeting now closed. Thank you all for attending.